Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I am calling the October 16th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. We will accept the agenda as printed. The most recent version in the packet has a couple of items crossed out, so if you printed an old version, we will not be having the Plus Master Plan update or the selection of the independent firm for review of the African Meeting House. Those have been delayed. Announcements, Rick?
The Select Board meeting is being audio and video recorded. Second announcement is that the May 3rd, 2025 Annual Town Meeting warrant is open for citizen warrant articles. Those can be submitted through November 18th, 2024 at 4 p.m. There's a citizen warrant article guide available. The link is in the agenda packet. And Town Council will be available for citizen warrant article consultation on Wednesday, October 16th, 2024 from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and on Thursday, October 17th, 2024 from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. via Zoom. Contact the town manager at nantucket-ma.gov for Zoom links for this.
And we do still have some spaces available if anybody wants to sign up.
So it isn't by appointment that you'll get
So
scheduled?
we've been doing quarter-hour increments. So people just email us and we send them the link once we get them put into a time slot.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erica. Any select board announcements or comments?
Madam
Tom?
Chair, I would just quickly say that Secretary Augustus of EOHLC, Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities, was on island today with Senator Sear, as was Thomas Moakley, who will be our next state rep, and the soon-to-be state rep from the 4th District for the retiring Sarah Peak, for a roundtable and a housing tour today. And it was really good to hear the feedback from the folks from the state on what's coming in the seasonal communities designation and how they are very willing to work with us to help move all the initiatives that we have moving forward and throughout the Commonwealth, but especially for the unique issues on the Cape and Islands. So that was really good.
Anybody else? Matt? Okay. I'm going to read a couple of things from the housing director to repeat what she told us last week. The Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is excited to announce the release of 2 requests for proposals, RFPs, for the development of affordable housing on trust-owned vacant lots. We invite interested developers to submit proposals that will help address the island's housing needs and create affordable and attainable rental opportunities. For more details and to access the RFP documents, please visit the procurement page on the town website. So I think if you just Google Nantucket Government Procurement, it'll take you. I'm not going to read the whole link. And then second, Richmond Development has officially opened applications for the lottery for 12 income-restricted units at Gooseberry Place within Meadows 2 development. These units offer a range of affordability with options for households earning 80%, 110%, and 120% of area median income. The public information session will be held on November 7th, and the applications are due by December 9th. The lottery will take place on January 9th, 2025. For more details and to apply, please visit the Richmond office at 1 Orchid Place, or the Nantucket Athenaeum has applications as well. And as part of the Secretary's housing tour today, I did ask a question about the percentage of units at Richmond that are now deed restricted at some affordable level. And the original application planning board approval was 25% of the units would be deed restricted affordable. And through the buy down programs, grants, and loans that the Affordable Housing Trust has made to Richmond, that is now 62%. So we went from 1/4 of the units deed restricted to 62%, with, and this is, people often ask, what have we been doing with the allocation of funding? And this is one of the important initiatives that we've had as we've increased significantly the number of deed restricted units at that development. So I wanted to share that information.
Just a quick question. Was there discussion of the housing bank with these guys here today?
Of course.
And how, was there anything positive?
I would say that Senator Sear was here, and obviously the Secretary is really supportive of the transfer fee. It's less an issue of support from the administration that's missing than the legislative will. And so we will be working with our delegation to try to move another round of effort forward on a transfer fee. So, good question and complicated answer. Go ahead, Tom.
100%. The only thing I would add is that they are well aware that we need a consistent funding stream, and that's the piece missing. So that's the seasonal communities designation, all that, the regulations get promulgated, et cetera. We're still missing that giant piece. So the Secretary and his staff and our legislative delegation are keenly aware that that's a missing piece.
Okay, Malcolm, anything? No? Okay, terrific. Okay, follow up on public comment questions. Hang on, I just have to pull up. Okay, so as we've said, we are posting to the new public comment page written responses to questions presented during public comment. And in some cases, the answers are longer. I'm just going to summarize them and point people to that page, so I'm not reading pages of long responses. Ms. Perry asked again about scheduling an agenda item related to alternative uses of the Surfside Crossing property, and I'll just reiterate that we're not going to agenda that discussion for the reasons that I mentioned, that we don't really talk about developing municipal projects on private property without participation from the property owner. And Burton Balkind asked about the 3-minute public comment time limit and where it originated. And there's quite a lengthy explanation of this that I think it's better to point people to read it than for me to try to summarize it. But it is rooted in practice across state and local government. It's also in response to some decisions around freedom of speech at public meetings and so on and so forth. So I encourage people to go read that answer. And he also asked, when will Wiggles Way be habitable? And can we explain the cost overruns and how much the costs have changed from the original cost estimate? And the answer is that the development has experienced a delay due to unforeseen circumstances involving the construction manager, which has impacted the project timeline. Housing Nantucket, the developer of the project, is working diligently to get things back on track. The original land development agreement was set at $6,750,000. However, after 3 change orders driven by design modifications required by the HDC and the Planning Board, along with steeply rising construction costs and commodity price increases, the current agreement stands at $12,779,000. Okay, and then Linda Durensis asked, what is the total dollar amount in regard to the contract that the town was going to be paying the developers of Surfside Crossing? What was the total amount that the developer was requesting? And the answer is the options contract proposed by the developers of Surfside Crossing did not include a specific price because the cost of the deed restriction would be based on the eventual sales price of the units. Since that information is not available, no exact dollar amount could be determined or was requested. Just to be clear, this proposal never reached the point of being considered for adoption, so there was really never any discussion about total numbers because it was going nowhere. Okay. We're now moving on to public comment for those items not on the agenda. Go ahead, Megan.
Is this on? You can hear me on it? Yes, I can. Oh, excellent. It's Megan Perry for the record. I met with town council today to go over citizens' articles, and I just wanted to thank the select board for making that available to citizens and town council for the time. I can't encourage our community members enough to take advantage of that. It was very, very helpful to me. So I wanted to highlight that and encourage the rest of the community to take advantage of that. It's great. While I was meeting with him, he brought something to my attention totally unrelated to the articles we were talking about or potential articles. He mentioned that he felt, or some others might feel, that I'm against affordable housing. And I just wanted to be perfectly clear. I'm not against affordable housing. I don't know where that might have come from, but I'm definitely not against affordable housing. I am against risky high density development. But I think you can see by the alternative plan that I tried to put forward to everybody that it includes affordable housing. So definitely not against affordable housing. Thank you on that. And then it was suggested to me that I give you guys a copy of the timeline I tried to read a couple meetings ago, just so you had it. I was pretty much reading the timeline of events for the options agreement. I say options agreement because that's what it was titled in all of the email correspondence regarding that. So that's how it was, that's the only reason I called it that. So I just wanted to give you that timeline. Here you are, Erica. And, oh, sorry, that's literally what I was reading. So someone suggested that I give it to you guys so that you knew what I was saying. So thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Thanks. Erica? Erica? Did you hit the button? The 3-minute timer?
Oh, no, I totally forgot.
Yeah, so we are testing, we forgot. So we're going to start with, you're good.
I was focused on people raising their hands.
Yeah, so, yeah. So Lynn, if
You're
you
the
could,
test.
if you could, could you pull the mic down closer while we're at it? Yeah, and then
So-
just remember to identify
Yes,
yourself
I
for the
will. I'm
record.
waiting for my 3-minute thing. There we go. I'm Linda Durensis. So I did read your answer, and I just want to explain why I feel you didn't answer my question. From the proposed support letter from the Select Board to the ZBA, quote, "Since the issuance of the joint statement by the Select Board and the applicant on April 18th, 2023, the applicant has been working with the Select Board," end quote. On July 30th, 2024, from Jamie Feely to the Housing Director in an email, "Please use this version to share with admin and legal review. It adds clarity around a few of the pricing formulas." August 19th, from Housing Director to Jamie Feely. "Attached are comments from staff and town council. See you at your office at 2:30. And for that meeting, the attendees were the Housing Director, an unnamed Select Board member, an unnamed Affordable Housing Trust member, and the Finance Director. I find it impossible to believe that in a year and a half of meetings with the developer, and including the Finance Director, finances didn't come up and weren't talked about a lot. So I'm asking my question again. How much during all these talks was the town going to give the developers, including waivers? And how much also did the developers want? Also, as you are all well aware, this same developer has had yet another commercial event on South Shore Road this past weekend. In the latest version of Vogue, this same property is featured with pictures. It would be hard pressed to call the reception area a tent. It's a structure. That event was so big that it needed a staging area, and the developer used the land which is called Surfside Crossing for that. Do you honestly think it's fair to the people who run commercial businesses and pay those taxes and fees and abide by the law that this developer is doing this and getting away with it, that he's running the commercial business in a residential area? It's not fair to the people that have commercial businesses. It's not fair to the neighbors. And being featured now in 2 magazines, Vogue and People magazine, we can expect a lot more of these events from people all across the country that are reading about these events because they have no idea that it's near the sewer beds and it's in a residential neighborhood. I would ask that the selectmen address why the town is allowing this. I look forward to your responses, and I still have 30 seconds left. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have an attendee online. Erica, let's give it a whirl.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, go ahead.
I'm good. I'm from London, by the way.
Okay, and did you have a public comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say that you need to stop a lot of crimes in United States of America. They should be stopped.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no other public comment? Oh, that went up quick. Campbell? Okay. Timer? Thanks, Eric. Campbell, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, the timer's 50.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
give
you.
you a
Can you
few.
hear me?
Yeah, can you reset the timer, Erica? We'll get
No,
this down. Hang on one second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Campbell?
I honestly, I wanted to check and yes. Are you not hearing me again?
No, I can
We can
hear
hear
you.
you
Just
fine.
keep talking.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to check and see if my machine is working because I keep having this problem getting through. I also wanted to thank you, Brooke, for mentioning the follow-up to the questions. I had totally forgotten about that until you mentioned it. So thank you for reiterating that. That was very helpful. And that's it. I hope you guys have a good night.
Okay, thanks, Campbell. I think we're good. Okay, so moving on from public comment, there's no new business. Next up is approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Pleasure of the board or questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second, I'm recusing on, I wasn't here on the 7th, but
Okay,
so I'm good, fine for the 9th.
okay, by roll call, Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, thank you. Next up, Sustainability Program Coordinator. We're going to get an update on the sediment transport study and dredge plan development. Vince?
Thank you very much. Vince Murphy, Natural Resources Department. Before I get going, Erica, can I just confirm that Devin is online? Yes. Super, thank you. Perfect. I'm just going to give a very, very brief introduction and overview. So talking on a topic I've never spoken on here before, we're developing a 10-year dredge plan for Nantucket's harbours, for Nantucket Harbour, Pulpus Harbour and Madaket Harbour. We're looking at how we can dredge, have navigable channels and have the beneficial reuse of the material that comes from those. We're going to reuse the sand in the best way possible for coastal resilience plan projects, hopefully. So this is a public presentation that we've delivered a few times already, just so that you're aware. We had a presentation and workshop in this room on September 4th. We had good attendance and great feedback that night. We've already taken it to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Matt, I'm sorry you're hearing this for a second time tonight. Just remember that one of your colleagues, Peter Brace, has heard it 3 times. We've also taken it to the Conservation Commission to get their feedback and their understanding of the project. The Harbour Harbour Plan Update Committee have seen this as well, and they're very interested in this and want to remain involved. And the Harbour and Shellfish Advisory Board, we presented to them twice. Second time was last night. So now we're taking this to the Select Board. You're getting the abridged update version as opposed to seeking too much feedback. We will be, if you have feedback, that would be terrific. And just to let you know that this is a 2-part process. We have done, and you'll see the results of bathymetric surveys, flow metering, and many other surveys and sediment samplings that took place to understand the science of this, to understand where we should dredge from a scientific point of view. We also, through the public presentations, including here tonight, sought the public feedback to understand from those who use the water what they think is worthwhile for dredging and where they see issues. So we can put the two important parts together of the good science and the public need. And that's why we're here tonight. And with that, if that's acceptable through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to pass it to Devon.
Hi, Devin, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Vince. Can everybody see my screen? Is that working as intended?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Devin McKay. I'm a senior resilience planner at Arcadis and the project manager for this sediment transport and dredge plan. As Vince mentioned, our goal through this process is to really stick with the science and help guide resilient decision making with respect to sediment management on Nantucket. The information that we're collecting through this project is primarily intended to improve navigation in the harbors to benefit the public and help maximize the use of sediment resources on island while also avoiding any unintended ecological consequences. As Vince mentioned as well, we're focusing on 3 project areas: Nantucket Harbor, Pulpus Harbor, and Nantucket Harbor. And through our project, we've had we have 4 main tasks. The first of which has been the development of a sediment transport model, and I'll talk more about that. The next piece of this is identifying, prioritizing, and planning both the dredge and beach nourishment projects. And that is happening through interpreting those modeling results, but also talking to stakeholders. And then lastly, we would evaluate those beach nourishment and dredging projects to determine which are priorities and start the permitting process for those priority projects. The goal is to have this project wrapped up by spring 2025. So data collection was a big piece of setting up our model. We collected a number of different data sources, including eelgrass mapping. This was done by a desktop analysis using really high quality imagery that was collected in spring 2023. We conducted a bathymetric survey, as Vince also mentioned, and this work was really concentrated in areas where we didn't have great data to begin with, or we expected those areas to change a lot. So making sure that our understanding of the environment is as accurate as possible. We also did water level monitoring through 3 water level loggers that were deployed at representative locations throughout our project area. And we collected those data for about a month. And we also did sediment sampling across the island. I know that map is quite small, but we took about a dozen sediment cores across the project area and a number of grab samples to understand what's there. Largely, we found that the sediment is suitable for beneficial reuse, which is good news for future dredging efforts. And this data collection was really to help us get the most accurate picture of reality to feed into our sediment transport model. So very briefly talk about model development. Our model is the Army Corps Coastal Modeling System. This was developed by the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and it has been used throughout New England to support a number of very similar efforts to what Nantucket is undertaking now. This model captures waves, winds, tides, and sand movement, which is what we are most interested in. The model leverages a number of data sources, including the field data that we collected through this project that I just talked through, as well as some federal sources that are located within the vicinity of Nantucket. So we incorporate waves, which are collected through the National Data Buoy Center. That's right off Nantucket Sound there. We look at winds, that's also coming from that buoy, as well as the NOAA station. And we look at tides. This is coming from NOAA and the Army Corps. And then we also consider bathymetry, which again is coming from NOAA. So using all of that information, we have some preliminary model results just to show here. And I won't spend too much time on this for the interest of time, but looking at this map, it is an animation. So we're looking at Pulpus Harbor here, and the colors that you're seeing, the brighter colors, the red and yellow, that indicates a faster current moving through that area. And the blue colors indicate a slower current. The arrows indicate the direction of flow in this area. And so you can see kind of where we may anticipate the sand to follow these currents. It's worth noting that our model looked at 3 different simulations. We considered a spring condition, a winter condition, and a storm condition. And under each of those 3 conditions, we looked at a 3-month model run period. Some takeaways from Pulpus Harbor. Waves help to move sand into the Pulpus Inlet, both from the north and the south. And we're also seeing that tidal currents are really important in redistributing the sand within that inlet, which is creating shoals. Moving now to Upper Harbor, a similar type of animation. The red and yellow colors indicate faster moving currents, and the blue colors are slower. Direction of the arrows indicates the way that the water is flowing. And this is a spring run for Upper Harbor. That's also what was shown in Pulpus as well. A couple of takeaways from Upper Harbor. We note that the cuspate features have been formed by tides and wind over time, and that aligns with what we're seeing in the model itself. The shoreline in this area is relatively stable with some mild erosion, and notably there's no source of sand feeding the beach along Cotu from the harbor side. Lastly, we have Nantucket Harbor here. Again, same type of animation. I think worth noting that the currents within Hither Creek are not nearly as strong, especially when compared to what's happening, offshore here. And I think that is as to be expected. And a couple of observations from Nantucket Harbor. So there's very little sand transport into Hither Creek. We do see some shoaling at the mouth there. It's worth noting that the sediment within Hither Creek is primarily mud, which is part of the reason why that channel is so stable, because the mud is not moving around quite as readily as sand would. In Nantucket Harbor itself, we see extensive eelgrass beds, but the sand movement there is primarily storm driven. So tried to keep that quick, but I think, Vince, we'd be happy to take questions if there are any.
Malcolm?
Yes. 2 questions. I guess it all depends on how good is your model. Has the model been validated? Are there sensitivity analysis with it?
Yeah, so the model has been validated, and we've done sensitivity analyses. As you know, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And I do believe this one is useful in answering the questions that we're asking it.
And then my second question, I get very nervous when I hear people talking about dredging. And you kind of talked a little bit about eelgrass, but not very specific about it. I mean, eelgrass, are we going to affect eelgrass? We've spent an awful lot of time, effort, and money trying to preserve it, and now you're going to be scraping it all up? That I don't understand. Please explain.
Yeah, so a big portion of our data collection efforts was making sure we understand where the eelgrass is, so that way we can avoid it. We haven't made any decisions around where we might be dredging precisely yet. That's part of what we're trying to collect feedback on. But the plan would be, if we decide to dredge a specific area, we would do additional field work to validate the presence or absence of eelgrass in that area and make sure that, any plan would not adversely impact those populations.
And Madam Chair, can I ask one more?
Sure.
So you're definitely going to come back to us when you get a better understanding of the eelgrass. And I guess I still want to know why we want to do this at all. No one's had a really good explanation.
I can answer.
Okay. Vince is going to respond to that.
I appreciate Malcolm's question. It's not wholesale wide dredging just because we feel like it. And it's not going to go into areas with sensitive habitats such as eelgrass or shellfish beds. And it was in the title description for the project. We want to be very environmentally sensitive. The purpose here is for the navigation. It's navigation channels. It's making sure that we can get to areas of the harbour that to keep them useful. If we don't do this, we're already starting to see issues getting up harbour, going around third and fourth points, if I hope I'm saying that right, opposite Pocomo Point, where you have to do very large S-curves and you can still get into shallow areas at low tide. Getting into into Pulpus Harbour at low tide is a constant problem. Boat users in that area complain regularly about it. Hither Creek is another area with massive dredging issues because trying to get up to the F Street boat ramp is silting up. So it's an access question. That's what all of this is about. And this is dredging for navigation, not dredging for silt. The beneficial reuse of all the material is a secondary part of this project. We're not doing sand mining as such. We're using the dredge material in a beneficial way to match up with, say, feeding a beach after the fact where there's already an erosion issue, say, on the North Shore or South Shore. So it is an identified need for access and for safety.
Madam Chair, could I follow up, please?
Sure.
Yes, but I mean, for hundreds of years, we haven't dredged. And sometimes when I take my boat around those little scallops out there, every year it changes. So you have to kind of learn where it's going to drift that year. And so you have to move a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. So what? I mean, I'm still looking for a good reason to do it, but I think, thank you for all your work. I'm still waiting. Thank you.
I can assist with that.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
So, yes, there's constantly shifting sand, and the constantly shifting sand is the problem. Once we look at where sand is moving over time, how it's getting to sit in areas that previously were useful or where there was previously a channel, and how depths are changing, where you can't get access to certain areas. Like, could you imagine the public uproar if we allowed Pulpus Harbour to silt up and no longer be useful? It would be an outcry. That's one of the things that we could be facing here. So again, this is to keep our harbours, our waterways as useful areas, not just for tourists, but also for fishermen, people who go out scalloping. They're the ones that are saying, I can't get to certain areas, I can't get to where I need. We want to make sure we can keep our oyster farmers going up and down harbour to make sure that they can get to their areas. And this is the problem that they've also identified in other parts of the state. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Other places like Edgartown on the Vineyard have a 10-year dredge plan. We're, for the first time in a while, not coming up with an original plan. We're copying what other communities have done to resolve the same issues for navigation. To get into areas that are needed. If we allow this to continue, we might have to go back to the days where we had the camel dragging boats across a sandbar in front of Bram Point. That's one of the reasons why we ended up with the jetties, to stop that kind of aggressive sedimentation that would block off our entire harbour.
Vince, you're magnificent. That's camels. What an answer. All right. Well, we'll see. I'm waiting.
Yeah, a follow up to Malcolm's. I think we have dredged. If Bobby was here, he'd be asking us why we hadn't dredged the ditches in Nantucket. Those are man-made, and how come we haven't done that in years? I do think we've dredged other parts of the harbor over our history. Part of it, it's navigation. I think part of it from sort of 15 years ago was tidal flow. I think part of this is to increase the Pulpus Harbor, the turnover from Pulpus Harbor, to clear stuff out, to have the water flow more freely. So I don't think it's just the navigation. I think if done properly, it'll improve the flow and the clean out and the clear out. Correct. And it is something we have done. What I wanted to ask, if I can, the question was, is the second part of it, when we look and say, if we dredge, where would we stockpile it? Where would we put it? That's going to be answered in this, yeah. Okay.
I can give an extra info on both of those if you're allowed. Thank you. So the first part we've done a lot of dredging. We've done ad hoc dredging as needed to respond to severe issues. That takes in everything except the main channel that is looked after by the US Army Corps of Engineers that goes through the jetties. For all the rest of the areas that the town has to do, like you say Easy Street Basin, another area that was identified at, say, Harbour and Shellfish Advisory, and I think it was also identified at the Harbour Plan Update and at CRAC. That was one of the areas that they said there's a huge issue. We need to look at one of those as a refined areas. So the dredging we've had, I have about 50 years worth of documents going back to the early 70s. So I've got 50 years worth of all of our dredge plans. And I have to publicly say a bit of a thank you to Dave Franzuto for that, because I got most of the information from a box of paperwork that he supplied. So there's a big one. Thank you for that. So we have a lot of history, but what we've never done is a comprehensive, well thought out dredge plan, moving from the kind of ad hoc as emergency dictates to well planned and well designed. And that gets onto the second question Matt had, where do we store it? One of the parts of that's in the elements of this project, one of the parts of the contract, is that we also look at sandbank location places. So this would be a place where you can take sand if you need to, screen it, sieve out any kind of anthropomorphic material, do some testing as needed, allow the sand to sit for 1 year to become inert, like allow all the biologicals to die off, and then put it on a beach to nourish a beach with clean, fresh sand as needed. So we need to identify those locations, but we need to understand a few steps along the way first. Where to dredge, the volume to dredge, the amount of sand that will be realized, and then the area, the footprint it would take, and then identify the spots around the island for that area. So it's a stepwise process, so we're working towards it, Matt.
Thanks, Vince. Anyone else? Bruce Mandel's hands up.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of the Select Board and staff and public. Ms. McKay mentioned, and if you could look at slide number 4, project tasks. There's a line there identified in green color, and it talks about engaging stakeholders. Now, in prior studies that we've engaged in, such as the ground and surface water sampling, the coastal resilience plan, this similar engaging of stakeholders was promised, and Nantucket specifically asked to be included as a stakeholder. And we were promised that before the reports would be completed, we would be engaged as stakeholders. And there are 7 or 8 stakeholders in Nantucket that are identified. In each of the cases, we were told at the end of the reports that the contract with the entity performing the report specifically identified stakeholders and defined them, and the public was not considered a stakeholder and would therefore not be engaged. Now, this is a concern. Nantucket stakeholders are concerned with dredging of the Nantucket waters. You know, we're concerned with eelgrass and our shellfish and population out there. So my question for Ms. McKay is to please tell us who are, were, or will be the Nantucket stakeholders that will be engaged for this report or study. And if they're not yet engaged, when will they be engaged in the process? So I'd appreciate hearing about that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Vince is going to take that question.
Thank you very kindly. And I said this at the start. This is an island-wide dredge plan, a 10-year dredge plan for the whole island, for all of our harbours. So Nantucket, Palpas, and Nantucket Harbour. So what we did was we had one public engagement session in this room on a night that the select board was off in the beginning of September. It was September 4th. We had a presentation from where you guys are sitting now, and then we had a public feedback session where we talked to members of the public and had poster boards up in the back of the room. The public the presentation section was recorded and put online. We had a public engagement session, and we had members of the of Nantucket community members present in the room that night. To single out any one group beyond that, I don't know what to do. We had a public session already.
Okay, thanks, Vince.
I have a question for Vince. If Bruce or anyone else had some comments, would they be accepted now? Is there any way for them to put those in if they wanted?
Like everybody, they're all free to email me, and Bruce has my email address.
Yeah, I realize he does, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. No other questions from the board? All right, moving on. Thank you, Devin, appreciate it. Mr. Salmon, public comment is closed, and the item that you mentioned was about national crime, which is not under the jurisdiction of the select board, so it's not eligible for public comment at a select board meeting, just to be clear. Okay, national crime statistics or something, I believe, is where you were going. So, okay, next up is Housing Office request for acceptance of deed and approval and execution of the settlement statement for 19A First Way. Vicki?
Good evening, Madam Chair. I have before you an approval of the unit deed for Unit A, 19 First Way, and there's an acceptance of deed for your signature, as well as a settlement statement covering the costs of the purchase for $920,000, with some incidental tax adjustments that are also being collected. And there is an oil tax adjustments being made in the favor of the town because the oil tank is non-compliant. And as a result, the town is going to get a credit, and they are going to install a new oil tank themselves. One question has come up just yesterday when the seller went to have the smoke detectors inspected, and the inspection revealed that there needs to be a hard wire on the smoke detector at the bottom of the stairs in the unit. And as a result, the seller has asked the town if they would be willing to accept a credit for the installation that the town itself would undertake. So at this time, the town is actually engaging to have an appraisal done, just to give us a cost estimate. And if you so agree, the town would receive a credit for that amount, and the town would then handle the installation of the smoke detector being hardwired. And the time period that would be allowed is 60 days from the date of the current certificate, which was issued. So there was a little bit of time and leeway as far as getting the smoke detector up to date. So I would ask that you approve of the acceptance of the deed, and then consider the adjustments that would be made on the settlement statement in your favor, based upon a cost estimate for the installation of the hard wiring for the smoke detectors. Any questions that you may have?
So is that two motions, or can we wrap that into one?
You could put it into one motion. You could, if you'd like, I'd be happy to. We move that we vote to accept the deed to Unit A, 19 First Way, and to authorize the adjustment for the hard wiring for the smoke detector certificate, an adjustment to be made in favor of the town.
Okay,
On the
great.
settlement.
Thanks for
So
that language.
moved.
So I have a motion from Don.
I'll second it. And then just a comment, I hope that we are not putting a new oil tank back in there. There are, you can put mini splits in for, half price. National Grid will pay half of it at this point, and we should not be putting that back into this dwelling. I made that comment when we were looking at this unit. So I'd love to take the credit for it, but as just a comment for the record, I hope we are not, doing that. Thank you.
Vicki, do you know what the plans are? My understanding was that it was going to go to mini split
Madam Chair, I do not know what the actual plan for putting in a new unit is, but I will certainly inquire with Christy Ferrantella and have her advise you accordingly as to what the plans are for installation. But the town is receiving a credit for the fact that the oil tank presently in the property is non-compliant.
Okay, all right, terrific. Dawn?
Oh, I was just going to say, what's become common practice is because these have to be replaced with the double walled, is that people take the credit because they're converting the heat source. Because it does have to be done within a certain period of time.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
That's what I'm assuming, but I wanted to make sure. 'Cause
Yeah,
she's
no,
saying,
it's good
"Oh,
that
we're
you put
putting
it on the
in," And I'm
record.
like, sometimes that happens just because something's there, you replace it, but that wouldn't be smart.
Yeah, okay, I remember this conversation. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions by roll call, Dawn?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, next up is request for waiver of the town noise bylaw for the third sewer force main project, road reconstruction on Surfside Road from Sparks Avenue to Fairgrounds Road from 4 PM to 5 AM, October 21st, 2024 to November 29th, 2024. Erica, are you gonna?
Sure. So I'm sure everybody has seen that the road reconstruction project has begun on Surfside Road. This request for a waiver is basically a backup plan. We are working with the schools to make sure that they are as accessible as they can be with day work. We are going to have weekly meetings throughout this 6-week process while the road is being reclaimed and then the pavement occurs. But if it comes to the point where it's not working anymore, we wanted to have this in our back pocket as a plan B. We don't necessarily want to use this because the road reclamation machine is actually worse than the sewer installation. And I know that was really, really tough for the neighborhood to deal with. It's louder, it actually vibrates more. So we're hoping that everyone will be patient with us. I know it's not an easy thing, but the road has to be done. So again, this is a backup plan B if needed.
Questions?
I feel like last time it was Monday through Thursday, so that it wasn't happening on the weekends.
This shouldn't be happening on the weekends. Does it say it?
No, I mean, it just says October 21st till November 29th.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
that
would
doesn't
just
include
note,
the
like,
weekends.
it should be
They're-
like
they're
Monday through
Friday.
Thursday, and it obviously
Oh, for
not
the,
on holidays.
Yeah. No, obviously.
Okay.
That was just the time period that the
Yeah,
project was happening.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because it is kind of that, it's not just the noise, it's the vibration.
Yes.
Speaking from
I would say
experience.
that would be fine Monday through Thursday with no holidays, if that's.
Okay, we're getting a yes. David Gray has his hand up. David?
Yeah, the reclamation is going to be Monday through Friday. The last time we did the Friday thing was because we did paving on Fridays. And as of right now, the plan is to do the reclamation in stages and then pave during the day, also Monday through Friday.
This is just if it's at night though, David.
If it's at night, the reclamation is the only thing we can do. We can't do any paving because Victor's permit does not allow him to operate his plant at night. So reclamation would only take place, but it would be Monday through Friday. The last 2 days, we were only able to do 275 linear feet. So it's a slow process. And they got the road graded today to the final elevation, and we're going to get back at it tomorrow after some maintenance was done on the machine today.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a clarifying question. So when we say Monday through Friday, we are talking about overnight. So are we talking about if you go to nights?
This would be.
It would be
4
Monday
PM on Monday
through
5 AM on Friday.
On Friday or Saturday?
Friday.
David? Just want to make sure he's confirming that.
Yeah, it's whether they work Friday night or not, it depends. They haven't clarified, but this is just in case. I mean,
Up till now, they have not.
they have not asked for Friday nights, no.
Okay. So if we amend the motion to say that we give them permission to do overnights Monday at
through Friday morning.
4 p.m. to
Friday, 5 a.m.
Friday at 5 a.m.
Correct.
Okay, so those overnights instead. So just to be clear, that's what we're granting. And the idea is it wouldn't always shift over all the time, but if there were a period of time where it worked better for the schools to shift to nights, we would do it.
And again, the road reclamation is the hardest part of this process. Once Victor comes in and does the paving, that's going to be a much, much quicker and easier part of this. So,
Okay, terrific. Pleasure of the board?
Move approval?
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay. Thank you. Next up, public hearing to consider the amendments to Town Regulations, Chapter 260, Fishing and Shellfishing, Section 4.29, Bay Scallops, subsection I, to allow the Select Board to have the ability to raise or lower the bushel limit for commercial scallopers if surveys indicate an alteration is needed, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 130, Section 73, and Chapter 122-5 of the Code of the Town of Nantucket. Who's present? Tara, you presenting? Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Tara Riley, Shellfish and Aquatic
Tara,
Resource.
just pull that down a little.
I'm Tara Riley, the Shellfish and Aquatic Resource Manager for the town of Nantucket. This item before you is what we've been working on with the Shellfish Harbor Advisory Board for the past 5 months, updating the commercial and recreational shellfish regulations. This item in particular, they wanted to fast track ahead of the commercial scallop season. Since 2019, we've been doing these benthic surveys for Nantucket Harbor, and this year it also included Nantucket Harbor. And we think that with the changing and evolving fishery in regards to the shellfish populations and the fishing pressure or fishing participation, that it would be a good idea that we are able to adjust the 5 bushel limit per commercial permit to go up or down based on conditions of the fishery.
Okay, questions from the board?
Yeah, just what would the criteria be? Would you have set criteria, or how would you determine this?
Right now, it would be based on abundance of adult shellfish only.
And are you going to look at how many boats are there and et cetera, like sort of take a pulse of it to gauge it?
That's something that we track for the past 5 years for November and December. It's been around 50 boats participating, and so we'll have an idea of what this does.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so the idea is just to give some flexibility up or down depending on the conditions. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, all right, terrific. Any other questions or a motion? Tom?
Tara, what would be the notice period for folks to be aware of that?
I believe it would have to happen at a public hearing. I was under the impression it would not need to be an advertised public hearing.
So normally when regulations are changed, it's been advertised for 4 weeks now. And then anytime a regulation is changed, we put an ad for 1 week in the paper. And so the effective date would be whenever that usually gets run in the paper. So it could be effective next Thursday, the 24th? If you wanted it before, is it November 1, which is, when does commercial start? December?
So this is an item, if for instance, there was an increase requested, it wouldn't necessarily be something that the Natural Resources Department would bring forward. It would have to be brought forward by the Shellfish Harbor Advisory Board and the Shellfish Association, and then Natural Resources would make a recommendation based on their request.
Sorry, my point was just about changing the actual regulation language, not the notice if you make that change.
So the
At a future
change,
meeting.
the change would be effective upon the board approving a change, right? Or would we have to notice it, I guess is what
I'm going
Tom's
to defer
asking.
to John.
John, do you have any?
So this is first of all, this is, I believe, a public hearing tonight, Madam Chair.
It is.
Yes, and I did not open the public hearing, so I will
Right,
open the
and
public
so you
hearing.
can do
Thank
that
you.
now and take public comment.
Okay.
Move to open the public hearing?
Yeah, I think I just,
You
I
did.
just
All right,
declared
good.
it's open.
All right.
So, okay. John, we have a hand raised that's been raised since public comment. When the gentleman spoke, he spoke about curbing violent crime in the United States, so I have not given him an opportunity to speak again. His hand has been up the entire meeting. May I make the judgment call not to call on him under those circumstances in a public hearing, or should I?
Well, I
on-
think we should first of all dispose of this matter because it is, you've opened the public hearing on the shellfish regulations, correct?
Right, but because his hand is up, am I obligated to allow him to speak because it is a public hearing? I can't know what he's speaking on. It's a bit of a unique circumstance.
Well, since his hand has been up ever since public comment, I think we can, and based upon what he said, I think you can reasonably assume that he's not here to speak about the shellfish regulations.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, John. So are there any members of the public that wish to comment on the proposed change in regulations? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So I'll say Malcolm second.
Yep. By roll call, Dawn?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The public hearing is now closed. Questions of the pleasure of the board? Further questions?
I'm fine with it.
Motion.
Make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So moved by Matt, seconded by Dawn. By roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you.
Okay. There's nothing in town manager's report tonight, correct, Rick? All right, and now, John, if we're going to have a discussion regarding the community impact fee adopted pursuant to Article 3 of November 7th, 2023 special town meeting. And you're going to run through this for us, John, right?
Yes. So we had, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, I had sent a revised memo to the select board regarding some questions concerning the community impact fee. And I indicated that based upon an opinion that was furnished to us from the Department of Revenue, the department indicated that the community impact fee would take place on October 1st, regardless of when the rental contract was executed. And so my advice, this was really an opportunity to provide the public with a clarification, and that the advice was if the community impact fee should be collected for all contracts commencing on where the rental period commenced on or after October 1st, regardless of when the rental contract itself was executed. We also, in that memo, had talked about a number of questions that had been raised along the way, specifically with regard to what types of short-term rentals are subject to paying that community impact fee, which is all spelled out in the memo in your packet. And we also discussed, that memo also discusses sort of the relationship between the community impact fee, the town's general bylaw, and the town's zoning bylaw. So I'm not quite sure what remaining issues there are, although I think one of the select board members raised some concerns last week. I think, I don't mean to speak for for Dawn, but I think she was concerned about whether the community impact fee isn't, or the way it's been presented, was that in fact what was intended by the vote of town meeting to adopt the fee.
So Don, do you want to?
John, I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention because I'm seeing it being instituted. And I feel as though town meeting really voted for it because they thought that this would capture and disincentivize more corporate-owned type of short-term rentals. And what's really the landscape of this is that most more what I would call like a big business type of short-term rental, if they have multiple properties, they're owned in separate LLCs, so this does not apply. And the people that it is being applied to are many longtime family situations where they've held on to properties through estates by renting in addition to owner use. That happen to have a main house and a guest house on the property. And I don't feel that is what was intended in terms of the impact. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe the revenue is important, but it's also creating a strange market where you have to sift through rentals, and some are subject to 11.7 and some are subject to 14.7. And it's just, I just don't know that it was worth it for what I think people thought they were disincentivizing, if that makes sense.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead, John.
You know, I certainly understand on what your concerns are. The problem is the way the statute is structured, and I'm talking about the community impact fee statute. And you may recall that there were two different types. One is a community impact fee on professionally managed units, and that's what the town adopted, as opposed to units where the owner, one of the units is owner occupied. But the professionally managed unit is a specific definition that's contained in the short-term rental law. It is basically, if I may, I'm just looking for the precise definition of professionally managed units. It is it is essentially oh, I see what's wrong. I apologize. Here we go. Excuse me. It is basically one of two units operated by the same operator in the town, which does not include the owner in one of the units. It does not include an owner-occupied unit. So that's a very technical definition of professionally managed unit, Dawn, in the law. I can't speak to what town meeting actually intended, but it was adopted by town meeting. The town notified the Department of Revenue, and that fee has now gone into effect. So I guess my question is, at this point, I'm not sure if you're proposing to unwind this and not continue with the assessment of this fee. That would have to go back to town meeting for a vote, however, if that was the intent of the town. It is true, I agree with you, that the community impact fee of the additional 3% only applies to certain types of short-term rentals in the town as defined in the statute. So there are individuals where their unit is professionally managed according to the definition that are paying one total fee. And then there are others that are paying less than that. There's no way around that based upon the way the statute is constructed, however.
Thanks, John. Matt?
When we talked about this about 3 weeks ago, my understanding was if someone owned two homes on one property, that they were not considered multiple. That was my understanding talking to John that night, and now I'm listening to Don and hearing that might not be true.
Yeah, and I mean, that was what I originally thought, but the problem comes into play if you rent both houses. And it doesn't matter if it's not all the time. It's if you have any rentals in both houses at any point during, say, the rental season. And just what I'm seeing in practice is that this is really impacting people that have longtime family properties that have been, nobody lives here full time, but this has been a way for them to have use and to hold on to things. And it just doesn't strike me as what people probably thought they were getting. That they probably thought this was going to be more applied to properties that are never owner occupied and are strictly, rent it whenever, all the time kind of thing. And those are really not being captured because they are very well organized and every single property is in a separate LLC, probably originally for liability reasons, but now it's a way to avoid this tax too. And you can't put houses on the same property in separate LLCs.
Matt?
I would like to know what the extent of it is. I'd like to have some more facts. I don't want to just do it on a, sort of on the fly on a Wednesday night. And I think now we're in that tricky spot where, some people are doing it and some aren't, and what's the fair way? If you were going to stop it, you still have to go to town meeting. When do you stop it? So I think we need more information even to consider whether to stop doing it. And which would take us, we're going to move at the speed of government, and it's going to take us a little while. But I think that your point is a good one. I don't think that necessarily was the intent. And we should know how many that we should know how many this is impacting. We should know, is there, what's the enforcement? Is there a way to, for the town to, sort of advise one direction? So just to simplify this, we have to look through what are our options? Because I'm a little hesitant about going, just putting something in and going right back to the state to take it out. They are already warning us about putting a lot of home rules in. So, I think, there's a lot of things we have to think about.
Yeah, Dawn, I completely agree. So this came, as you know, came out of the short-term rental work group, and going through that process with my fellow committee members, work group members, that was certainly not the intent. I agree with you that it was more the kind of general definition of professionally managed unit. It wasn't, because Nantucket has all these unique rental situations that we heard about for months and months and months. And I also agree with Matt that for us to consider putting that back on town meeting warrant to repeal the community impact fee, that I think we should see some data on who it's affecting, what the numbers are. The bifurcated market does make sense though, and I could see how that would be very confusing for consumers and would also hurt a certain segment of the market who may just be, like you said, families trying to bridge their house to because they need to rent, et cetera, for all the number of reasons. It's not necessarily, well, this fee is the make or break between an islander or what. There's all these different scenarios. So I appreciate you bringing this to the board, and I think this is a good discussion to have when we have some more data.
Malcolm, did you want to?
No, I agree with my former colleagues. I think we have to tread lightly, and I'd like to see more information. But we can't, we have to deal with it. We just can't say, let's have another study, another committee. Let's, 2 or 3 weeks, a month, we should be able to have some information we could look at.
I mean, I would just suggest that NARAB be talked to, that they're going to be able to, some other people higher up than me will be able to tell you exactly what's happening.
And I would also like to ask anyone who's watching this or watches it in the next week or so to send the board your feedback on this topic. We'd like to know what your experience is, and specific examples, I think in particular, will be anecdotal until we have a season, if we keep it for another season.
This shouldn't be us then sending to us trying to influence us. This should be coming from a staff member who's charged with this aspect of town government. You know, and I don't know who that is. Is it in the Board of Health? Is it, you know, that group? Someone, you know, we should have some structure on this, is how I think about it. You know, not just NARAB wants this and 4 people want something else and, oh, we'll just do it. That's kind of how a lot of our boards get into trouble. I think this should be coming through structured channel.
Well, I think an indication of people's concern coming to me wouldn't help me decide whether to allocate town resources to analyze it. I think I need that. I mean, I appreciate Don's perspective, and I would also like to hear what is people's experience and what's happening, and then that might inspire me to say, I mean, that department is already working really hard to get the registration up and running. So to add this analysis to their workload right now doesn't seem like a smart thing to do. So I'm saying as another way of sort of anecdotally for us to hear how broad this issue is and whether to take it further, that would be helpful for me. And Dawn and then Malcolm.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting like for real estate brokers to come in and influence. I was just suggesting that they actually have the data on how many properties like in their rental programs are impacted and what the makeup is of those owners.
Yeah. Malcolm?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The health department, I've said many times, is not the place for this, all right? There's no health issues with short-term rentals, yet even tomorrow night, we have an issue that's kind of thrown at us about a short-term rental. We don't have a registration program yet. Please don't put it on the health department. They're having to deal with the health of this island, not rental issues. That's all I can say. So, but I think we need to deal with this soon, but the health department is not the place to sort this out.
I also wonder whether, you know, in the crafting of this legislation up at the State House, they probably didn't take into account the unique housing structures of Nantucket we're one of the few communities that has as broad a secondary dwelling bylaw in the Commonwealth. And so, you know, we've applied a legislation that was crafted for 351 communities, and we may be an odd exception that makes it poorly applicable here. And maybe there's a path toward an amendment, you know, to the legislation under the seasonal communities designation that lets us have a little more flexibility around this as well. So that might be a legislative path towards solving this as well. So more to think about, but I appreciate you bringing it up, Don. I'm not interested in revoking it at town meeting this year. I think we can, you know, evaluate further.
Yeah, kind of, or like Judge Vey, they're gonna read our regulations and think that our second dwelling is for the reason we said it was. You know, if you read his decision, he talked about how that, you know, how, oh, we must do it that way. Well, we don't. But that's one thing, thinking about it. And then I had another point. No, go on and it'll come back to me one second.
I mean, does anyone else have anything else? Now or never?
Now or never. Give me a second.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Oh, sure, John, go ahead.
I just wanted to emphasize that the fee is payable if it's the same operator is operating 2 or more units as short-term rentals, whether or not they are located on the same lot or on separate lots. So that's not relevant under the short-term rental statute. It may be, and it is true, that in Nantucket, there are a lot of situations where the two units, they're separate dwelling units. They're located on the same lot. And if and one might be the primary residence, which is rented as a short-term rental. The other might be a secondary unit, which is rented as a short-term rental. Those are both subject to the tax. Now, in another circumstance, if there's a primary residence on one lot and across the street, there's another lot where the same operator operates a second short-term rental, then both of those units are subject to the tax as well. The only time it really gets a little bit dicey, and it's addressed in my memo, is when if there is a dwelling unit that has the primary, that is, I'm sorry, where the two units are located within the same dwelling unit, then, you know, under certain circumstances, it's subject to the tax as well. So what I say in my memo is, if one or both of the rental units is located within a single family, two family, or three family dwelling unit that is physically located in the same, I'll call it building, and if it includes the operator's primary residence, then that unit is not subject to the community impact fee. Okay, so whether or not they're on the same lot is really not relevant unless one of the units is the primary residence of an owner and they're located within the same building. And I know it's confusing, but unfortunately, that's the way the law is written. And perhaps use of the term professionally managed units was somewhat misleading. But I can assure you that the way the statute works, it would apply if it's a second dwelling unit on the same property and both of them are short-term rented. Those are professionally managed units and both are subject to the tax. So it may be a misnomer with the way the statute is written, but that's what we were dealing with.
Okay,
I remember what I was going to say.
okay.
I don't think we need to call people in and ask them, people that have just had an additional tax added to them, to ask how they feel about it. They're going to say, I don't want to have to pay that tax. You know, that's pretty self-evident, you know?
I agree, but I think to Dawn's point, perhaps there's unintended impact that wasn't clear to town meeting that is worth us investigating.
Yes. I agree with that, but
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah, so being able to hear that impact as the tax or the law is applied technically would help me decide whether I think it's a benefit to the community to assess it or not. So, thanks, John. Okay, we good with that? Okay, and John, you're up again. Review and discuss the open meeting law complaint filed by Megan Glowacki and proposed response prepared by town council.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So Brian Riley in my office evaluated the open meeting law complaint that was filed by Megan Glowacki. And we have prepared a draft response for the select board to consider, and that's contained in your packet. And essentially, based upon the information that we received, there was never a discussion among select board members regarding this issue. So there was no violation of the open meeting law. I believe the complaint is suggesting that it was not done at the discussion did not occur at a posted meeting, but in fact, there was not a discussion on this question among the board members. It was something that the town manager, in consultation with the housing coordinator, decided to issue a public statement. So we don't think there was a violation of the open meeting law because the discussion never took place. among a quorum of the select board. And so that's the basis of our response denying the open meeting law complaint.
Do you need any action from this board?
Just to approve the draft letter that's contained in the packet, and if you do approve that, we will send it off to the
Okay.
Division of Open Government, and that will be under Brian's signature. It's all, he's already signed it, we just need your approval to send it.
Okay, pleasure of the board or questions?
I make a motion to approve the letter. I do have a question about the statement in the violation, though. Can I ask it?
Yep, why don't you ask that first and then?
I'll hold my motion. It references that on October 2nd, I wasn't at that meeting. That was when I was away on vacation. That there was a presentation done of an alternative use by a community collaboration project. Was there a presentation done, or was there a public comment made?
There was a public comment made.
Because I feel like the statement's a bit disingenuous that there was a board agenda item for a real proposal, because there's the public comment had nothing about how this land was being acquired, and a lot of things were thrown in there that are great community initiatives. I mean, one being the Island Home, which already has like extensive planning put into it. But there could be many uses for many pieces of property on the island, but I just don't think that there was a real proposal.
So do you want to change
brought forth.
presentation to public comment?
Well, it's how the open meeting law complaint is written.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't change that. That's
Yeah, that's
the
not
way it's
ours.
written.
I just wanted to raise it because I just don't feel like what was sent to the state was completely factual.
Should we clarify that it was not discussed at the presentation was that?
I think it might be valid to add it to the letter, that it was really just a public comment. It wasn't an organized effort that was discussed by the board for a piece of property that the board or the town or the community has any control over. So
I'm looking for the letter, and it isn't in the packet I downloaded. It must have come in via email.
Which letter?
The letter that they're referencing that we're
The
about.
draft open meeting law?
It's
response?
it's there.
It's there.
It's
You
at the
probably just
end.
have a older
It's
version.
on
Yeah,
page
it's-
60 of the packet.
Yeah, it's there.
All right. Oh, maybe it's, let's see, this 62?
We can
yeah,
certainly.
I think I would take out that it was a presentation, but it was a public comment that the board's policy is not to respond to.
Yeah.
I added it yesterday. I emailed everybody.
Oh, all right.
Because I believe it's creating confusion within the community.
Okay, we can revise the letter that way. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve this letter and have the chair review the edits
Okay.
and sign it.
Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second for discussion and just add that Attorney Riley presented to the Affordable Housing Trust yesterday and briefed the trust on that this letter was being drafted.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready for a vote by roll call? Dawn?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
I'm recusing. I haven't read it yet. I'm downloading it now.
Okay. Malcolm?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And so we'll review that context. I'll do that with John and Brian. Okay. Thanks, John. Any committee reports? Dawn?
It's not really a committee report, but I just wanted to let everyone know that there was an article about the Vineyard, that they're thinking about building a new high school. And the low end of the budget is coming in at $197 million. So just, this is the landscape of the kind of numbers we're starting to see with big projects.
Yeah,
Oof.
exactly. Well said, Matt.
Yeah, I think, I do think that we should, and I've talked in executives, I'm not in agenda setting. I think at some point we do need to talk about, as this board and/or our staff should be talking about what is a commercial enterprise, what constitute a commercial enterprise, what are policy impacts. I believe that we do have, sometimes decisions are made in other departments, other individuals that have other impacts throughout the government, and then it becomes sort of, then we're operating with one hand tied behind our back. And so I think that we should be, there are major policy decisions, and we should be having input on those, and not saying, oh, well, that's the ZBA, and that's that person, and that's that person, and they have to deal with it by themselves. We are the, Libby's the town manager, and we're the top board here. We should be dealing with some of this. So, I have asked for us to get information and talk about that, because some of these things have far-reaching implications. So, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, not a report per se, but just a quick update. I'm the rep on CPC, and we started our interviews today, which Dawn has been in many of them, and just how wonderful a program CPC is. And we have so many great applicants with historic preservation projects, et cetera, that are just great for the community to see. And I think it's just one of those success stories in state and local government, where you can really see it out there. And all the stuff that CPC does is pretty great for the community. So anyway, I just wanted to say that and give kudos to the CPC staff and the rest of my committee members.
Okay.
And that was happening when I first ran, like a million years ago. And CPC was somewhat controversial. There were people going, oh, we don't need that, we don't want that. And I think part of how we sold it was saying, let's get ahead of it, because if you get ahead of it, you earn that more money early on before everyone else caught on. And so in a way, we were kind of fortunate that we were able to do that at that time, where a lot of times it takes us a while, and this one we got through early on. So it's kind of good.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
By roll call, Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone who's out there listening. Have a good evening.